Hey everybody, Mark Procknik here, Librarian of the New Bedford Whaling Museum, here in the stacks to give you another story from the stacks. Today we're going to talk about Paul Cuffe and our collection of Paul Cuffe papers. Now Paul Cuffe was notable for many reasons, but one of them is that he organized the Back to Africa movement, where he transported freed slaves, freed African Americans to Sierra Leone in the early 1800s. Now our collection of Paul Cuffe papers documents with a very specific point in Paul Cuffe's life. The bulk of our collection deals with the time leading up to his very first voyage out to Sierra Leone, 1815-1816. So what that entails is most of the collection consists of correspondence. Now what kind of correspondence? Well, we have Paul Cuffe's letter book that contains his outgoing correspondence, I believe most of it written in his hand. A letter book is just a book of outgoing correspondence. So, for example, today if you send an email or a text, you retain a copy of that message. In 1815, when you'd mail off a letter, you didn't have a copy of that unless you made one. So letter books were made to compile outgoing correspondence so you would maintain a record of all the correspondence that you had sent. The collection also contains incoming correspondence, and there's one letter in particular that I want to highlight from this one gentleman named Stephen Wamsley. And I think he sums up exactly sort of the way what's going on in 1815. So he's actually from Providence. So in Providence, on August 13th, 1815, Stephen Wamsley writes, Captain Cuffe, I am a black man and want to know what condition the black are to sail upon and when the vessel is to sail. I wish if you please to write back as quick as possible and let me know so that I may get ready. I am your most humble servant, Stephen Wamsley. And here's the letter right here. We can see, based on Mr. Wamsley's inquiry to Paul Cuffe, fairly well known in the community. I mean, he's as far away as Providence, writing to a Westport native about, and I say far away, it's not that far now, but no cars, nothing like that. So he was in Providence, and he's writing to Paul Cuffe about his trip to Sierra Leone. And that's what the collection's all about. This collection, we have correspondence to Paul Cuffe and from Paul Cuffe, documenting his preparations for Sierra Leone, culminating in the trip itself, in which we have a list of those who made the very first trip with Paul Cuffe out to Sierra Leone. This document is dated the 10th month, which is, so Paul Cuffe was a Quaker, that's how he would date things, so the 10th month would be October. So October 18th, 1815, in Boston. And he's writing, he lists everybody who shipped with him to Sierra Leone out of Boston in 1815. This is a gem of a document because it shows that essentially this documents the history of Paul Cuffe's Back to Africa movement. This is what got it all started. This was the very first trip, the very first voyage out to Sierra Leone, and everybody who accompanied him. That's fairly significant. We have on exhibit right now the address that Paul Cuffe gave to the settlers upon first arriving at Sierra Leone. That's on exhibit right now. But when it's not an exhibit, it lives in this collection, in this box here, in stacks, where there are many stories, and Paul Cuffe being just one of them. There are several papers in here. Essentially, every single piece of correspondence in this Cuffe collection has its own story. I just pulled two for you to get a sense of his overall story, which is very, very, very significant for a number of reasons. But that's just one story here in the stacks at the museum. So feel free to stop by, check some more out.